This is the story of the great war that Rikki Tikki Tavi fought single-handed through the bathrooms of the big bungalow in the Siglowi cantonment. Darzee, the tailor bird, helped him, and Chukuranda, the muskrat, but Rikki Tikki did the real fighting. He was a mongoose, rather like a little cat in his fur and his tail, but more like a weasel in his head and his habits. His eyes and the end of his restless nose were pink. He could scratch himself anywhere he pleased with any leg, front or back. He could fluff up his tail till it looked like a bottle brush, and his war cry, as he scuttled through the long grass, was Rick tick 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 tick. One day, a high summer flood washed him out of the burrow where he lived with his father and mother. The water carried him, kicking and clucking, down a roadside ditch. He found a little wisp of grass floating there and clung to it till he lost his senses. When he revived, or came back, he was lying in the hot sun on the middle of a garden path, very draggled indeed, and a small boy was saying, "Here's a dead mongoose. Let's have a funeral." "No," said his mother. "Let's take him in and dry him. Perhaps he isn't really dead." They took him into the house, and a big man picked him up between his finger and thumb and said he was not dead, but half choked. So they wrapped him in a soft blanket and warmed him. Almost immediately, Rikki Tikki opened his eyes and sneezed. "Now," said the big man. He was an Englishman who had just moved into the bungalow. "Don't frighten him, and we'll see what he'll do." It is the hardest thing in the world to frighten a mongoose, because he is eaten up from nose to tail with curiosity. The motto of all the mongoose family is, "Run and find out," and Rikki Tikki was a true mongoose. He looked at the blanket, decided that it was not good to eat, ran around the table, sat up and put his fur in order, scratched himself, and jumped on the small boy's shoulder. "Don't be frightened, Teddy," said his father. "That's his way of making friends." "Ouch, he's tickling under my chin," said Teddy. Rikki Tikki looked down between the boy's collar and neck, snuffed at his ear, and climbed down to the floor where he sat, rubbing his nose. "Good gracious," said Teddy's mother. "That's a wild creature. I suppose he's so tame because we've been kind to him." "All mongooses are like that," said her husband. "If Teddy doesn't pick him up by the tail or try to put him in a cage, he'll run in and out of the house all day long. Let's give him something to eat." At nightfall, he ran into Teddy's nursery to watch how kerosene lamps were lighted. When Teddy went to bed, Rikki Tikki climbed up too, but he was a restless companion, because he had to get up and attend to every noise all throughout the night, and find out what made it. Teddy's mother and father came in, the last thing, to look at their boy, and Rikki Tikki was awake on the pillow. "I don't like that," said Teddy's mother. "He may bite the child." "He'll do no such thing," said the father. "Teddy's safer now with that little beast than if he had a bloodhound to watch him. If a snake came into the nursery now, he'd take care of it in an instant." Then Rikki Tikki went out into the garden to see what was to be seen. It was a large garden, only half cultivated, with bushes as big as summer houses of Marshall Neal roses, lime and orange trees, clumps of bamboo, and thickets of high grass. Rikki Tikki licked his lips in excitement of the great dinners to come. "This is a splendid hunting ground," he said to himself, and his tail grew bottle brushy at the thought of it. Rikki Tikki scuttled up and down the garden, snuffing here and there till he heard very sorrowful voices in a thorn bush. It was Darzee, the tailor bird, and his wife. They had made a beautiful nest by pulling 2 big leaves together and stitching them up to the edges with fibers, and had filled the hollow with cotton and downy fluff. The nest swayed to and fro as they sat on the rim and cried. "What's the matter?" asked Rikki Tikki. "We are very miserable," said Darzee. "One of our babies fell out of the nest yesterday, and Nag ate him." Said Rikki Tikki. "That is very sad. But I'm a stranger here. Who is Nag?" Darzee and his wife only cowered down in the nest without answering, for from the thick grass at the foot of the bush there came a low hiss. A horrid cold sound that made Rikki Tikki jump back 2 clear feet. Then inch by inch out of the grass rose up the head and spread hood of Nag, the big black cobra, and he was 5 feet long from tongue to tail. When he had lifted 1/3 of himself clear of the ground, he stayed balancing to and fro exactly as a dandelion tuft balances in the wind. And he looked at Rikki Tikki with the wicked snake's eyes that never change their expression, whatever the snake may be thinking of. "Who is Nag?" said he. "I am Nag. The great god Bram put his mark upon all our people when the first cobra spread his hood to keep the sun off Bram as he slept. Look and be afraid. He spread out his hood more than ever, and Rikki Tikki saw the spectacle mark on the back of it that looks exactly like the eye part of a hook and eye fastening. He was afraid for the minute, but it is impossible for a mongoose to stay frightened for any length of time. And though Rikki Tikki had never met a live cobra before, his mother had fed him on dead ones, and he knew all that a grown mongoose's business in life was to fight and eat snakes. Nag knew that too, and at the bottom of his cold heart he was afraid. Well, said Rikki Tikki, and his tail began to fluff up again. Marks or no marks, do you think it is right for you to eat fledglings, or baby birds, out of a nest? Nag was thinking to himself and watching the least little movement in the grass behind Rikki Tikki. He knew that mongooses in the garden meant death sooner or later for him and his family, but he wanted to get Rikki Tikki off his card. So he dropped his head a little and put it on one side. Let us talk, he said. You eat eggs? Why should not I eat birds? Behind you! Look behind you! Sang Darzee. Rikki Tikki knew better than to waste time in staring. He jumped up in the air as high as he could go, and just under him whizzed by the head of Nagina, Nag's wicked wife. She had crept up behind him as he was talking to make an end of him. He heard her savage hiss as the stroke missed. Rikki Tikki came down almost across her back. If he had been an old mongoose, he would have known that then was the time to break her back with one bite, but he was afraid of the terrible lashing return stroke of the cobra. He bit, indeed, but did not bite long enough, and he jumped clear of the whisking tail, leaving Nagina torn and angry. Rikki Tikki felt his eyes growing red and hot. When a mongoose's eyes grow red, he is angry. And the sat back on his tail and his hind legs like a little kangaroo and looked all around him and chattered with rage. But Nag and Nagina had disappeared into the grass. When a snake misses its stroke, it never says anything or gives any sign of what it means to do next. Rikki Tikki did not care to follow them, for he did not feel sure that he could manage 2 snakes at once. So he trotted off to the gravel path near the house and sat down to think. It was a serious matter for him, but soon Teddy came running down the path, for Rikki Tikki was ready to be petted. Just as Teddy was stooping to pet the agile mongoose, something flinched a little in the dust, and a tiny voice said, Be careful, I am Death. It was Karate, the dusty brown snakeling that lies for choice on the dusty earth. Karate's bite is as dangerous as the cobras, but he is so small that nobody thinks of him, so he does more harm to people. Teddy shouted into the house. Oh, look here, our mongoose is killing a snake. And Rikki Tikki heard a scream from Teddy's mother. His father ran out with a stick, but by the time he came up, Karate had lunged out once too far, and Rikki Tikki had sprung, jumped on the snake's back, dropped his head far between his forelegs, bitten as high up on the back as he could get hold, and rolled away. That bite paralyzed Karate, and Rikki Tikki was just going to eat him from the tail after the custom of his family at dinner, when he remembered that a full meal makes a slow mongoose, and if he wanted all his strength and quickness ready, he must keep himself thin. He went away for a dust bath under the castor oil bushes, while Teddy's father beat the dead Karate. What is the use of that? Thought Rikki Tikki. I have settled it all. And then Teddy's mother picked him up from the dust and hugged him, crying that he saved Teddy from death. And Teddy's father said that he was a providence, and Teddy looked on with big, scared eyes. Rikki Tikki was rather amused at all the fuss, which, of course, he did not understand. Teddy's mother might as well have petted Teddy for playing in the dust. Rikki was thoroughly enjoying himself. That night at dinner, walking to and fro among the wine glasses to the table, he could have stuffed himself 3 times over with nice things. But he remembered Nag and Nagina, and thought it was very pleasant to be patted and petted by Teddy's mother, and to sit on Teddy's shoulder. His eyes would get red from time to time, and he would go off in his long war cry of, Rick tick 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 tick. Teddy carried him off to bed and insisted Rikki Tikki sleep under his chin. Rikki Tikki was too well bred to bite or scratch, but as soon as Teddy was asleep, he went off for his nightly walk round the house. He stole off to Teddy's bathroom, but there was nothing there, and then Teddy's mother's bathroom. At the bottom of the smooth plaster wall, there was a brick pulled out to make a slice for the bath water. As Rikki Tikki stole in by the masonry curb where the bath is put, he heard Nag and Nagina whispering together outside in the moonlight. "When the house is emptied of people," said Nagina to her husband, "he will have to go away, and then the garden will be our own again. Go in quietly and remember that the big man who killed Karate is the first one to bite. Then come out and tell me, and we will hunt for Rikki Tikki together." "But are you sure that there is anything to be gained by killing the people?" said Nag. "Everything. When there were no people in the bungalow, did we have any mongoose in the garden? So long as the bungalow is empty, we are king and queen of the garden. And remember that as soon as our eggs in the melon bed hatch, as they may tomorrow, our children will need room and quiet." "I had not thought of that," said Nag. "I will go, but there is no need that we should hunt for Rikki Tikki afterward. I will kill the big man and his wife and the child if I can, and come away quietly. Then the bungalow will be empty and Rikki Tikki will go." Rikki Tikki tingled all over with rage and hatred at this, and then Nag's head came through the slice, and his 5 feet of cold body followed it. Angry as he was, Rikki Tikki was very frightened as he saw the size of the big cobra. Nag coiled himself up, raised his head, and looked into the bathroom in the dark, and Rikki could see his eyes glitter. "Now, if I kill him here, Nagina will know, and if I fight him on the open floor, the odds are in his favor. What am I to do?" said Rikki Tikki Tavi. Nag waved to and fro, and then Rikki Tikki heard him drinking from the biggest water jar that was used to fill the bath. "That is good," said the snake. Now when Karate was killed, the big man had a stick. He may have that stick still, but when he comes in to bathe in the morning, he will not have a stick. I shall wait here until he comes. Nagina, do you hear me? I shall wait here in the cool till daytime." There was no answer from outside, so Rikki Tikki knew Nagina had gone away. Nag coiled himself down, coil by coil, around the bulge at the bottom of the water jar, and Rikki Tikki stayed still as death. So Nag is coiling himself down the shower drain so that way he can pop out whenever the dad comes in and bite him then. After an hour, he began to move, muscle by muscle, toward the jar. The jar is the bathtub. Nag was asleep, and Rikki Tikki looked at his big back, wondering which would be the best place for a good hold. If I don't break his back at the first jump," said Rikki, "he can still fight. And if he fights, oh, Rikki." He looked at the thickness of the neck below the hood, but that was too much for him, and a bite near the tail would only make Nag savage. "It must be the head," he said at last, "the head above the hood, and when I am once there, I must not let go." Then he jumped. The head was lying a little clear of the water jar under the curve of it, and the teeth met. Rikki braced his back against the bulge of the red earthenware to hold down the head. This gave him just 1 second purchase, and he made the most of it. Then he was battered to and fro as a rat is shaken by a dog, to and fro on the floor, up and down and round in great circles. But his eyes were red, and he held on as the body cart whipped over the floor, upsetting the tin dipper and the soap dish and the flesh brush and banging against the tin side of the bath. As he held, he closed his jaws tighter and tighter, for he made sure that he would be banged to death, and for the honor of his family, he preferred to be found with his teeth locked. He was dizzy, aching, and felt shaken to pieces when something went off like a thunderclap just behind him. A hot wind knocked him senseless, and a red fire singed his fur. The big man had been wakened by the noise and had fired both barrels of a shotgun into Nag just behind the hood. Rikki Tikki held on with his eyes shut, for now he was quite sure he was dead. But the head did not move, and the big man picked him up and said, "It's the mongoose again, Alice. The little chap has saved our lives now." Then Teddy's mother came in with a very white face and saw what was left of Nag, and Rikki Tikki dragged himself to Teddy's bedroom and spent half the rest of the night shaking himself tenderly to find out whether he was really broken into 40 pieces, as he fancied. When morning came, he was very stiff, but well pleased with his doings. "Now I have Nagina to settle with, and she will be worse than 5 nags, and there's no knowing when the eggs she spoke of will hatch." Goodness, I must go and see Darzee, he said. Without waiting for breakfast, Rikki Tikki ran into the thorn bush where Darzee was singing a song of triumph at the top of his voice. The news of Nag's death was all over the garden, for the sweeper had thrown the body on the rubbish heap. "Oh, you stupid tuft of feathers," said Rikki Tikki angrily. "Is this the time to sing?" "Nag is dead, is dead, is dead," sang Darzee. "The valiant Rikki Tikki caught him by the head and held fast. The big man brought the bang stick, and Nag fell in 2 pieces. He will never eat my babies again." "All that's true enough, but where's Nagina?" said Rikki Tikki, looking carefully round him. "Nagina came to the bathroom sluice and called for Nag," Darzee went on, "and Nag came out on the end of a stick. The sweeper picked him up on the end of a stick and threw him upon the rubbish heap. Let us sing about the red-eyed Rikki Tikki." And Darzee filled his throat and sang. "If I could get up to your nest, I'd roll all your babies out," said Rikki Tikki. "You don't know when to do the right thing at the right time. You're safe enough in your nest there, but it's war for me down here. Stop singing a minute, Darzee." "For the beautiful Rikki Tikki's sake, I will stop," said Darzee. "What is it, O killer of the terrible Nag?" "Where is Nagina?" for the 3rd time. "On the rubbish heap by the stables, mourning for Nag. Great is Rikki Tikki with the white teeth." "Rikki Tikki, I led Nagina toward the house, and she has gone into the veranda, and, oh, come quickly, she means killing." Rikki Tikki knew that he must catch her, or all the trouble would begin again. She headed straight for the long grass by the thorn bush, and as he was running, Rikki Tikki heard Darzee still singing his foolish little song of triumph. But Darzee's wife was wiser. She flew off her nest as Nagina came along and flapped her wings about Nagina's head. If Darzee had helped, they might have turned her, but Nagina only lowered her hood and went on. Still, the instant's delay brought Rikki Tikki up to her, and as she plunged into the rat hole where she and Nag used to live, his little white teeth were clenched on her tail, and he went down with her. And very few mongooses, however wise and old they may be, care to follow a cobra into its hole. It was dark in the hole, and Rikki Tikki never knew when it might be open out and give Nagina room to turn and strike at him. He held on savagely and struck out his feet to act as brakes in the dark slope of the hot, moist earth. So he sang a very mournful song that he made up in the spur of the moment, and just as he got to the most touching part, the grass quivered again, and Rikki Tikki, covered with dirt, dragged himself out of the hole leg by leg, licking his whiskers. Darzee stopped with a little shout. Rikki Tikki shook some of the dust out of his fur and sneezed. "It's all over," he said. "The widow will never come out again." And the red ants that lived between the grass stems heard him and began to troop down one after another to see if he had spoken the truth. Rikki Tikki curled himself up in the grass and slept where he was. Slept and slept till it was late in the afternoon, for he had only done a hard day's work. "Now," he said when he awoke, "I will go back to the house, tell the coppersmith Darzee, and he will tell the garden that Nagina is dead." When Rikki Tikki got to the house, Teddy and Teddy's mother, she still looked very white, for she had been fainting, and Teddy's father came out and almost cried over him. And that night he ate all that was given to him till he could eat no more, and went to bed on Teddy's shoulder, where Teddy's mother saw him when she came to look late at night. "He saved our lives and Teddy's life," she said to her husband. "Just think, he saved all our lives." Rikki Tikki woke up with a jump, for all the mongooses are light sleepers. "Oh, it's you," said he. "What are you bothering for? All the cobras are dead, and if they weren't, I'm here." Rikki Tikki had a right to be proud of himself, but he did not grow too proud, and he kept that garden as a mongoose should keep it, with tooth and jump and spring and bit, till never a cobra dared to show its head inside the walls. Hopefully you enjoyed that story. Now you're going to go ahead and work on the questions following in the document.